Namaskar everyone and welcome to Desi Talk. So we had a little bit of a technical issue last week, and because of that we're going to try to summarize some of the information from last week as well. I'm very excited because we're talking about scientific advances, and this is the last episode in our series for this month on new beginnings in science and technology. I see that Yashu is here. Let me add her. So yeah, I am very excited for today's episode because we'll have two guests. So that's even more exciting. Hey, Yashu.
Hi.
How are you?
I am good. I am good. Speaking of science and technology, I was just troubleshooting some technical difficulties, but you know what? Today's going to be smooth. It's going to go well. We're not going to have any technical issues, so we should be good to go.
Hey, all the technical issues were not even from your end. Our live didn't save last week, which is so frustrating, but I feel so lucky that your friends are so giving and they're willing to come on for a little bit even today and just summarize some of that information because I was really sad. We lost like an hour of like awesome information. It's just lost in the ether.
But it's also kind of good because now we're going to be able to get like a quick snippet of a very dense topic. And literally, we were briefing just before this live and, just kind of highlighting the main points that we really want to come across with our audience. So I'm actually really excited about this recap because I think it's going to flow a lot better for people. It's going to be more digestible for people. So I'm excited. And we have an additional guest speaker coming on today with another topic as well. So I think it's going to be good that we're kind of putting them together. So I'm actually excited for this episode.
So yeah, welcome to Desi Talk with me, your co-host Srishti Prabha, the managing editor at India Currents, and my co-host.
Hey everyone, it's your girl Happy Yashu. Thank you all so much for tapping in for today's amazing episode of Desi Talk here with India Currents. If you're not following India Currents, be sure to go follow india.currents. Hit the little bell button so you get all the notifications when we go live and we have these amazing episodes of Desi Talk where we're bringing to you guys different topics with different themes every month. This month's talking about new beginnings, specifically scientific advances. We had the opportunity of talking to an amazing pathologist, talking about vaccines and COVID. Now we're talking about the energy crisis and, of course, artificial intelligence. Whoa!
That is like the cutting edge new beginning. So this is like the perfect series that we've gotten. And luckily for us, Yashu happens to know half of them because she's working in the field. She's a PhD student herself, so let's not forget that she's also a great resource for this information because she never brings it up. So I don't want to waste too much time because I know we have a lot to cover. So I'm going to introduce our guest from last week again because it didn't work out last week. So our guest from last week was Chaitanya Bhave. He is a PhD student in the Department of Material Science and Energy at University of Florida. His doctoral research focuses on the developing and implementing of a computational model of molten salt corrosion for molten salt reactor applications, which I now understand this week, which I didn't understand last week. It's very cool. And he is passionate about working on technologies that tackle climate change and the energy crisis. So let me bring Chai in.
And with this time we have a backup, so if Chai Bhave's thing doesn't work, then Air Studios, you can go ahead and add them in. And what? Hey,
it worked! Hey,
Finally.
again. Welcome back. Thanks for coming.
Good to be here.
All right, so I know that Yashu probably did a great job of telling you exactly how to summarize. So I don't know where you guys want to start, but Yashu, go ahead and you can facilitate the dialogue.
Sure, and I think we have a lot of new people tapping into our live today. Thank you all so much for tapping in. So I think a good starting place for us would definitely be like telling us who you are, what you do, and what is, what is your background? What is your research in right now? Like, what is it that we're talking about today? in terms of like nuclear energy. Like what is all of that about?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the introduction, and thanks for having me again. As you mentioned, my background is in material science and engineering, and my research focuses on developing computational models for sort of accelerating the development of new nuclear reactor technology. And that's sort of where I come from, is to help to accelerate nuclear technology to help solve the energy crisis.
And I know that when people hear nuclear, they're like, okay, this is some like scary, like this is dangerous, you know, things like that. Is that true though? Like, and of course I know the answer because I'm doing my PhD in it too, but like, I know a lot of people are asking this question, like, you know, what made you get into such a touchy subject, or like, you know, what is it about nuclear energy that you think is even worth all of us investing our time and efforts and research in?
Yeah, so first of all, nuclear energy is actually statistically one of the safest ways of producing clean energy that we have right now. If you look at per watt, it produces the least amount of waste, and it's one of the only energy sources right now that can replace coal-based power plants, because it can produce a baseline base load power supply. And this is something that solar and wind and all these other technologies cannot do. And so they can't solve the energy crisis fast enough, or as fast as we need to fix it. And that's sort of what. Yeah.
Right, and you mentioned last week something about how there's different generations of technology, and how the newest generation of this technology is trying to figure out how to use that, repurpose the waste from nuclear power plants. So maybe you can just give a little bit about that.
Yeah, sure. So briefly, there's 4 generations of nuclear reactor technology. Generation 1 is just the prototype reactors made mostly for studying nuclear reactor reaction processes. Generation 2 and 3 are the reactors that are actually generating power commercially everywhere. The US only has generation 2. Some countries like Japan, France, they have generation 3 reactors. And generation 3 reactors are just commercial reactors with slightly more modern technology. What I'm working on are generation 4 reactors, and these reactors focus on 3 main things. So to improve the commercial viability of these reactors even more, to be able to have very high levels of reactor safety. So everyone's always concerned about these incidents like Chernobyl, and these happen because of partly policies, but also these are really, really old technologies. I mean, these things run on floppy disks from their memory banks, and like you discussed last time, most people here might not even know what a floppy disk is.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And finally, the third aim of these technologies is to be able to repurpose the nuclear waste that we are producing. So one of the chief concerns with nuclear power is that the waste that we do generate lasts for centuries, but that doesn't have to be so. That's partly because of the old technology, and you can 96% of the fuel in these old reactors is actually still usable to generate more power. And so these new reactors are focusing on repurposing that and running, using them to generate more power.
And I think this is also a good place to kind of talk about your research, Chai, which is kind of like the future of where like nuclear energy and everything is kind of going. And I kind of want to like break it down into like baby steps as well for everyone very briefly. And we kind of talked about this too, but your research is on molten salt reactors. So like, what is that in a couple of words? And then like, why are we using that technology? Like, why is that the future in a sense?
Yeah. So in a nuclear reactor, you have the nuclear reactions which generate heat, and you need some coolant to take this heat, move it away from the reactor core and to a boiler where you can use that heat to generate steam. Now, old reactors, the generation 2 and 3, usually use water as this coolant. And the issue with this is that above 100 degrees Celsius, water becomes steam, and steam pressurizes as you heat it more and more. And what this means is like your reactor is essentially like a pressure cooker. And if you overpressurize it, that city is going to blow off, and you don't want that with a nuclear reactor. So the nice thing with molten salts is that they can operate up to like 1000 degrees Celsius, which is 10 times the temperature. And even at those temperatures, they have very low, what we call vapor pressures, which just means like it doesn't produce a lot of fumes. And so it's never going to generate that kind of pressure. So you don't have to worry about that kind of steam explosion. And also, because they operate at these higher temperatures, they're more efficient. And you don't need the containment to prevent that steam explosion, so they are cheaper as well.
Awesome.
And I think last... Go ahead, Srishti.
No, What'd you say?
I was saying this is such a good topic, so I always feel like there's like so much, and that's why for all of our viewers who are tapping in, again, thank you all so much. We want to condense it, make this a digestible episode for you all, so you're understanding these topics. And Srishti, I want you to definitely ask about like the policy side of things, you know, because I know you have a good background in that. And for me, I just wanted to ask a quick question, just being on the experimental side of nuclear research, and then Chai being on the computational side. First of all, what is computational? Because that's a good lead-in also to our whole, our next guest speaker as well, right, in this age of computerization. So kind of like, what is computational, and how does your work tie into, you know, the future of molten salt reactors kind of thing? And then how do people like me who are on the experimental side, like how are we part of this research equation as well? And then that can, again, I think, Srishti,
oh my God, Yashu, you asked like 3 questions at once.
I know.
4 times, like, which one do I start with? This is the last episode issue. Yeah, no, let's first hear about, like, what is Yashu doing, and then how that contributes to your computational modeling and what that means.
Okay, so the traditional way to do research with most engineering topics, and even nuclear, is you run experiments, controlled experiments, and see what happens, and then you try to understand and develop models so that you can predict what will happen in certain other conditions that you cannot test. Now, the issue with this is these experiments are very costly, they're dangerous sometimes, and they're very time-consuming. And it would be really nice if we could have a computer emulate what happens in an experiment. So, for example, if you play a video game and your character jumps, then after some time the character comes back down, right? But there's no real gravity inside a game. We simulate the gravity in the game. And so what we do is we take these things that happen in an experiment and put them into a computer in sort of the same way as a game does, so that we can predict what will happen without having to do a lot of experiments. So for example, nuclear reactors operate for hundreds of years, right? You can't run an experiment that's 100-year long. Like the scientists who work on it will die before the experiment completes. So with the computer, we can do the same experiment in a matter of days by simulating it. And so that's the real benefit of computational. And where these two sort of merge is that these computational models need a lot of data from experiments. And so that's where there's the handshake between experiments and computational, that computational aids what experiments should be done, and experimental helps to build the computational model itself.
Amazing. This was a really good recap of all the stuff we learned. I think there was one more element that I'd like for you to touch on, and we talked a little bit about how many nuclear reactor energy sources there potentially are in the world, and like, are there any ones in India? Like, are Desis interested in nuclear reactors? And you even told me where there were like the highest concentration of reactors. So, you know, just give me that little rundown again.
Yeah. So, well, first of all, there's a lot of reactors in the US. And like Yashu mentioned last time, a lot of them are concentrated along the Midwest. Generally, we tend to build them in relatively low population density areas, because if something does go wrong, worst case, it's a more contained way to run those things. And India does have its own nuclear energy program as well. We have Bhabha Atomic Research Center, which is like our national lab dedicated to this kind of research. And they have more or less the same goals as the US in terms of energy independence and moving away from fossil fuel usage.
Awesome. Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Yashu.
And I think this is also kind of important to our viewers to address, right? We have these different research efforts that are happening, and I know that people are always still kind of like scared when it comes to nuclear, and I think it's really about redefining the relationship that we have with this particular topic of like energy nuclear energy research and things like that. And I think we have to say, whether it's bars in India or here at in the US, we have the United States Nuclear Regulatory Commission. There is a reason we have policy behind a lot of these research initiatives that we have going on, whether it's the Department of Energy here in the US, whatever it looks like, right? So just kind of because I think this is important to address, right? That for researchers like myself or Chaitanya or any Desi person who's trying to get into this research, I think it's important to say that a lot of policy does go into the outcome, the results, right? So if we're trying to really work on this energy crisis, which is and Chai, you can definitely tap into this. Like, how necessary is it for us to really take on the nuclear energy initiative right now, considering like where we are with the energy crisis? Like, can you just give a little bit of light on that?
Yeah, so this energy crisis is like a really critical thing that is often difficult to understand because of the time scale over which it happens, right? The effects of climate change happen over a decade or even several decades, and often it's issues that are so vague, like, oh, the ocean levels might rise, oh, this might happen, but it's not immediately like, oh, you won't be able to drive to work. It's not a problem that you can immediately fix and understand, and so we tend to sort of underestimate the impact of it. But a good way to think of it is that 2 to 4 years ago, we had roughly 10 years to significantly reduce our carbon emissions in order to prevent a 1.5 to 2 degrees Celsius change in the global temperatures. And this temperature benchmark is a really important one, because once we go past that, we enter the regime where we will see this serious climate change effect, and it sort of becomes a self-propagating cycle where where climate change increases the rate of climate change.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think one thing I think we might have to end your portion of this, but the one thing that you said last time that kind of stuck with me was that I know your background wasn't necessarily in energy. It was in computer science, and it was the energy crisis that pushed you to start working on nuclear reactors and modeling. And so I remember you said to like Desi kids, and maybe anybody really, like, if you're being pushed into these industries, there's ways to harness that education and knowledge, and then maybe use them in places that are more meaningful, like the energy crisis, because like you said, we only have now 5 years to reach that same or like to lessen the gap of the temperature change, and we haven't really made a dent in that yet. So that's stressful. I'm stressed thinking about it, but I'm glad that we have people like you and Yashu honestly working on that, because I mean, not all of us can do everything, but all of us can try to understand, advocate for policy, talk about it with people. And so I think this is super important. That's why I had you come back, because I think talking about this is so important, so people understand that nuclear reactors are not a scary thing, and for all the reasons that you guys already said. So thank you, Chai. And if you have any other, do you have any last thoughts you'd like to leave us with?
Yeah, so I just have one concluding remark about approaching the nuclear industry, is that yes, there is some danger to this technology, and I think personally that the benefits far outweigh any risks. But if you do think that it is a risky technology, then that's all the more reason for you to educate yourself in that technology and understand it, so that you can work on improving that technology so that it's less dangerous, right? The solution to that is not to just be afraid and shirk away from it, because if it's possible to build something, someone's going to build it. Better be sure that you're the one who's building it and making sure it's good.
That's so true. And I think the takeaway for me, because I know you and Yashu are working on it, I didn't know as much, was really like what the next generation of nuclear reactors really is, because that's something that's not out in and it's not common knowledge, and it's not known what are the precautions being taken to ensure that these reactors are going to be better, like the molten salts, and obviously even reusing the waste, so that's not just sitting there and creating another environmental justice issue. But learning about that is so important. I mean, I I don't even think they teach that in school. So it's just like you guys working on it, like educating random people, like, hey, this is what we're doing is super important. Yashu, do you have any thoughts?
That's about it. Thank you so much, Chai, for educating us. Now we're about to segue into a topic that for me personally is scary because when I think artificial intelligence, I think robot. So Chai, if you can go ahead and transition and bring on Hrushikesh Varma. And as he comes on, I'm going to go ahead and quickly introduce Hrushikesh. Hrushikesh hails from India, came here to the United States to do his research in computer science, specifically on machine learning and autonomous security. You see that transition we did there?
That was
Boom.
amazing. There's even a thumb over the thing. Awesome.
Autonomous security. And so for me personally, I thought Hrushikesh was an absolute perfect person to interview today because he is very talented in not only what he does and his research background, but he's one person who's very passionate about this particular topic, and he's very good at educating even the most, like, listen, when I ask him questions, he breaks it down to me to like apples and oranges. So I think he's the best person to bring on today. So thank you so much, Rishi, for being here today and joining our live. But go ahead and tell everyone, you know.
And thank you for a wonderful introduction.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Tell everyone who you are and then what you do specifically. You know, I know you work on like machine learning as well as autonomous security. I don't even know what that word means, but I'm already scared. So just shed some light for us.
Okay. So yeah, as Yashu introduced, I'm Hrushikesh. I did my undergrad in India in electronics and communications engineering, and I'm currently doing my Ph.D. in computer science. And my research topic is autonomous security. So when we think autonomous vehicles, the inputs to these vehicles come from various sensors ranging from cameras, sliders, radars, and electronics. These since they are physically present outside of the vehicle, they are easy to hack into and create false data into it and just leave the vehicle maybe in the wrong lane or something like that. So right now we're testing on scenarios that can do that and what we can do to make sure that these things can be stopped from happening. So that is my area of research.
Yeah. Doesn't your dad drive a Tesla?
My dad drives a Tesla, so he got it. And then, you know, you can like buy the self-driving. It's not released yet, but it's like you can buy the program that allows for it. Mainly for the reasons, which is that the security issue, the security breaching is like too like questionable right now in the policy. Because they have to like pass legal like laws in each state in order to even, you know, further work. But actually one of my friends works in autonomous driving. She works for Neuro, and they're doing testing, I think, with like grocery delivery and stuff in Texas. I don't know how much you know about that, but they are trying these things, right? Like they're out on the road now. Yeah.
So even testing these kinds of things, we can just test out every possible scenario. So we need to be prepared for that because if it's something new scenario, we as a human will be able to adapt to it, but we're not sure if a machine will be able to adapt to it. So that is where we require artificial intelligence, which provides the machine with sufficient intuition so that it will be able to adapt to these kinds of new scenarios and act accordingly.
Right. I always think, you know, you think robots. I think, did you ever watch Ex Machina? That movie, did AI a disservice because it is scary.
Of all the movies that represent robots taking over, I think Ex Machina is the most accurate one.
Yeah. I'm scared.
I'm so scared. And I would love for you, if you just tell us, like, what is artificial intelligence? Like that, just the name scares the crap out of me.
Before you start, I'm going to talk as a very lay person with little to no understanding of AI. I know that there's like levels, right? There's like AI, like there's like a tier of the types of AIs can be, like almost leading up to like, I think it's 4 or 5 or something with like consciousness.
Right.
So maybe it would be nice to break that down, like what each tier is, and then what you're specifically working on, where that would land, and then what where's the cutting edge AI work trying to go?
Right. So there's this point called singularity, which is where machine intelligence meets human intelligence. And as of now, we're a couple of decades away from it, maybe even a century away from it. So we don't have to worry about machines taking over as of now. So, so that problem is solved for now, at least. But coming to tiers, so these things are divided into different segments. So in autonomous vehicles, there are tiers, and in natural language processing or computer vision, or there's different segments, and the tiers are sort of different for each of these segments. Right now, Tesla is in tier 3, which is not fully autonomous, but almost autonomous kind of thing. But Apple jumped into the autonomous industry, and so there's a lot of research going on in tier 4.
What does tier 4 mean? So that would mean it's fully autonomous, like it doesn't require. Okay.
If we're good with tier 4, we would be fully autonomous. So these kinds of research require a lot of capital. So they're generally limited to industry research and in the top universities itself. But yeah, so.
In layman terms, okay, like I ain't even going to Srishti's question. Come back down a little bit more, because I don't know my AI.
Okay.
What is AI? And then what are these tiers? Like I'm a little lost.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll be giving you some scenarios. Let's say, so artificial intelligence is just taking data and making sense out of it. That is the gist of artificial intelligence, no matter what, where you use it. So all you do is you collect the data and you try to figure out what the data is telling you. It's like you have images, you have a voice, you have all kinds of differently disorganized data. You collect it, and you try to make associations between different parameters and try to understand what these parameters mean with each other. Let's say you have pixel intensities. If you're going with images, you have pixel intensities. You have the shape of the object. Okay, so this might look like an apple. So you try to figure out what these different parameters tell to you, and you try to build a machine which takes these parameters and figure out that this is Apple. You build algorithms that can do these sort of things, and this is just for detecting apples. But you do this to all the other things, and you have artificial intelligence. But yeah, so people thought that we were really close to getting artificial intelligence, but what happened was as soon as you tilt the apple, the machine failed to detect that it was an apple. So we're basically at that level right now. But because we're human, we can just look at a single apple and say it is an apple, looking at from any angle or any distance. To be able to get that level of sophistication is what is going on right now. That is the entire field of artificial intelligence.
Okay, and do you know how far out that technology would be? Because I know you said like human level consciousness is like 100 years maybe out, but like this, what do you think is like the time frame for this?
So we're really close to mimicking human natural language perception. So we have chatbots and stuff which can really
I saw that,
which can really accurately. We have Google assistants. We have all kinds of assistants which can understand what we are telling and get the accurate answers out. So for natural language processing, we're doing really, really good. There are actually machines that are able to write down movie scripts and all sort of things. And so
my next question to you, sorry, on the same train of thought is like the ethics involved in AI work, right? Because there was that, I think it's like Boston Robotics, or I forget their full name, but they had like a dog AI thing that they sold to the police, I think the NYPD, and then the NYPD was using them to like essentially survey minority populations and people of color, and then it became a whole thing, and then they got they got a lot of bad press and all these things happen. So like, how much do you think about the ethics of what you're working on? Like, how does that play a role?
Yeah, so that is a problem because everyone is interested in AI, but I don't think I don't remember reading about a significantly interesting paper or any kind of research regarding AI ethics. No one is really interested in working on it, and
not in one of your classes. Like, you never took an ethics class ever.
AI ethics. I mean, there are some things going on in the last 2 years, but I don't think that's enough because we need to make policies. So everything, all the things that you've mentioned is about the data. So it's like we grow up and we build models from the people around us. We are a reflection of who we are around. It's the same thing with machines. What data you use to train the machine reflects what the machine gives the output as. So if your data is biased, your machine is also going to be biased. So
so that's why I'm thinking, like, you would have like, you are the researchers, and if you are biased in whatever form, like, you're never taking an ethics class or like that's wild. But I'm assuming then you're using, like, I mean, people always say like the scientific like method should be generally unbiased, but that's not always true. So how are you? So then what? Then what?
So the first thing would be to figure out ways to detect biases in the data, because I don't have to be biased to build my model. I can if I consciously build a model that has bias, then that is on me, and it is easy to detect those sort of things. But if I am not aware of building a model that is biased, then it would be really late by the time that someone figures out that there's a bias in this thing. So we need to figure out ways to build like detect biases or any kind of obstructions.
So you can build. So you're saying you can build into your system a way of detecting your own bias, and that wouldn't be unbiased because you're like basically checking yourself. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So there's a lot of research going on this right now. We're not at the best possible. We don't have the best possible methods or algorithms that can do that, but we're making progress every day on this, and So
I have a follow-up question here. Just kind of talking about, these issues or difficulties surrounding AI. What are some other things that, well, now that you've debunked the fact that they're going to take over us and destroy all of us, right? Because that was a fear I had. I
he
want to
didn't
know,
debunk it. He said it was a century away.
Okay, well, it didn't happen in my lifetime. Okay, he didn't debunk it. You're right. But I ain't going to be alive for it. I don't know if my reincarnation will, but let's not go there. But coming back to what we're talking about, what I want to know is, like, what are some of the issues or difficulties or drawbacks to artificial intelligence, like kind of as a umbrella? And then there I go again with my double question. But the double question. But what are some drawbacks that you are currently seeing with autonomous security, since that's your background?
Okay. So everything boils down to the data. So right now, to train a decent model, you'll need around 50,000 examples. If you want to build a model that detects vehicles or a model that detects trucks or something like that, you will especially autonomous vehicles standard, you will need 60,000, 70,000 images, and you need hours and hours to train the model. So that is something, if this goes on, if we don't build models, if we don't try to build models that, which they are doing, obviously, but if we're not able to build models that can learn from lesser, that can build better intuition from lesser amount of data, or are just less computationally expensive, it might be more than a century to build the the singularity that we talked about. So that's one thing.
Interesting. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's one thing. I guess this has been troubling all the AI researchers from across the world, and that's one thing. And the other thing is, it is really easy to build machine learning models with our everyday tutorials and stuff like that. But if we don't understand what exactly they do and what is the mathematics underlying them, it is easy to build false models which can give false prediction. And yeah, and I've seen this a couple of times in researchers and in papers, and especially if people do not have a mathematics or a computer science background, they're prone to make statistical errors, which will be used to build upon the research which will be coming further. So that
you're
is
saying prior research. One second,
exactly.
You're saying prior research is potentially like has enough significant statistical error that the stuff that you're working with might be difficult to work on.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Especially if you're not working in artificial intelligence and you're just using the present artificial intelligence models to build whatever you want to build. So this is something we need to keep in mind when we.
So just to give you perspective, Srishti, I kind of am like right now in the nuclear world and then like kind of touching the machine learning world. Okay, so my research actually kind of goes into what he's doing, and I feel like he's low key like Yashu. This is you.
No.
So what's happening?
No, I don't mean that, because so in machine learning, generally we have two types of data. We have the training data and we have the testing data. I've seen papers that have used the same data they have trained with to test the network, which is actually frowned upon in computer science and doesn't actually give accurate results of the performances of the network.
So for all the kids out there, if you're doing your studies, listen to him. Awesome.
And
so,
I think, kind of to touch base, like just kind of what I was saying, right? Like right now, my research is machine learning for nuclear reactor research, right? Now, a big problem, this kind of and this is why this is great, because it ties into what Chai was talking about too. Right now, we have a limitation on experimentation when it comes to nuclear research. Just because it's a very, touchy subject, the experiments take time, things like that, right? So for me, an issue that I ran into is that we have a very limited size of data. Like right now, my data set is barely 100 points. And so what happens is, for people like Rishi who are training these artificial intelligence or whatever, right? You heard him say, like, his work to get a decent model is like 50,000 data points.
Right.
I barely got 100.
Yeah.
So you see that there is the quality of the research, or maybe not the research, but the quality of the actual predictions or whatever are not going to be as accurate, and that can happen a lot. That's a risk that happens when your experimentation or your data is so limited, but you're trying to apply artificial intelligence, which may be the future of it. So that makes me question, Rishi, and you can kind of touch on this. How important is data to artificial intelligence? So
as of now, with the models that we have, data is the first priority. Because we as humans have better algorithms in our brain which learn. We are able to learn what a thing is. Maybe I show you a fruit, a new fruit, something, maybe a pineapple, and you will be able to look at it just for an instance and will be able to detect any pineapple you ever see. But that's not the case with machines. So you need to be accurate. There might be data that just puts maybe a rock and a few leaves on it, and the machine will detect it as a pineapple.
Right. I feel like a good layman way of even explaining this exactly what you're saying is, if you have an iPhone and you're having to input your face, you have to do like all the different angles of it, and then you have to do it like a few times so that it can recognize your face in multiple scenarios. Or like your thumbprint, same thing, you do it from different angles so it like knows. So yeah, like it totally makes sense that you need so many data points to make sure that every time it sees you or it sees your thumb, it really gets it. My last question to you is like, is there cool AI technology that you see in India? Are there like cutting edge Desi AI people that we should keep an eye out for? Just to bring in like kind of the cultural element, because this is like a forum for South Asians. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, unfortunately, there's no government-run artificial intelligence lab like the BARC we have in India. But there are some really established professors who are working in top universities such as Stanford and Berkeley, and even in University of Florida. There's this person called Jitendra Malik. He's a top-notch professor from UC Berkeley, I guess, and he works on computer vision. And there's Baba Vemuri from our university. He also works in computer vision. I'm really interested in vision, so I generally follow the people who work in vision. But yeah, so I don't.
And I would say even like Google, right? Like we have the CEO of Google, who I will. Right, and I will never forget. I once like watched this like YouTube video where he was talking about the introduction of like artificial intelligence and like, hey, listen, I depend on Google all the time. I ask it the time, I ask it the weather and everything. So he was doing this like one video about how he can like book a hair salon appointment using, this stuff. And so when you see people, doing these things, especially like coming from the Desi community, you see these Desi people in these positions, right? It's truly inspiring. So my question to Rishi, and that could be the way we wrap up today, like what got you involved in this research? Like,
good point,
where like you come from India, this is research that's ongoing globally, but like what really made you get into this?
Yeah, so when I started actually reading about artificial intelligence, most of the textbooks were explaining how chess was considered a huge problem a couple of years ago. But the thing with chess is you can semantically write down the rules and explain which ones are good steps and which ones are not. But how do you explain something as complex as vision or even self-driving, which happens in higher levels of cognition? There's no way we can comprehend what's happening in our brain. And to be able to build a network that mimics that, build a model that mimics that was really interesting and got me intrigued into this field right now.
Do we have autonomous vehicles or a lot of AI in India right now?
No, there's not much, not as much as that is going on west, but there are only a few. There's I don't think
they're
there's
outsourcing. Everyone is leaving India and coming here to do it. That's what it is.
So I don't
hopefully
think
some of you go back.
Yeah, I hope I would go back someday. But coming to industry research, I don't think there's any significant industry research going on in India. But there's a lot of potential because as we see, many of the colleagues that I have, many of the startup companies in India were actually bought from. I'm sorry, startup companies were actually bought from India and many Indians. And so there are institutes such as IISc and IIT Madras, which have a lot of reinforcement learning and other types of AI research going on in there, and this can mark to a huge potential of.
Yeah, maybe the market is like a little bit behind for people to go back because when my dad's a software engineer, and this was back when computers were not a resource that was available. And he would say like he went to BITS Pilani and they had a whole room that was like
Right.
the computer, like the computer took up an entire room when they were learning. And you know, it was really cutting edge research at the time and there really wasn't an industry. But then they
Uh-huh.
outsourced to the US, and so then he came here, and now it's like something everybody has. So at some
Yeah,
point,
exactly.
like this will
Exactly.
become like a thing. I hope
Yeah.
in India that they start to implement because they're taking all of the resources. So
Yeah, yeah. So
um,
it's not just in India. There are very few countries that have
mhm.
that are doing cutting edge research, and they are only limited to the uh, to US, Canada, and
Right. It's like
few
what you
US
said.
and Europe.
It has to do with the
But
wealth, right? Like how
Yeah,
much money is
exactly.
being put into the funding.
Exactly.
Okay,
Yeah.
makes sense.
Thank you so much, Rishikesh, for
Thank you.
joining in with us
No
and
problem. It was
shedding
my
some
pleasure.
light.
I had fun chatting with
Wait,
you
before
guys.
you leave, you know what?
Uh-huh.
I wanted to just mention your name is Rishikesh Varma. My familial last name is also Verma, and it's spelled
Oh,
the
okay.
same way, which is almost never the case. Everyone always spells Verma.
Yeah. That
So
happened.
just excited to see that.
Yeah.
He had to say that.
Yeah.
But thank you so much. You can hit the little X in the corner to exit out. But again, thank you so much. And just to kind of wrap up, I have to say the other day I was on Instagram, okay? And I saw this video. And it's from Asia. And I think I'm going to say it was from Japan, but I'm not 100% sure, okay? But basically, it's a restaurant that's run by robots. And so, like, you come inside and you, like, check in with this robot that, like, has a face. Okay, it's like a little robot, but then has like two eyes and a mouth, and like it says like hi, welcome, and then like shows you the menu, and then like you pick what you want, and then like it walks you to your table,
Where is
and like
this?
it's some Asian. I knew it was
It's
it's an Asian
ramen,
country.
right? Is it ramen?
I don't know what it was,
Okay.
but it creeped the hell out of me. I would not set foot in that restaurant. I'm sorry, I couldn't. I wouldn't. I can't.
Yeah, I'm like super intrigued by AI, and it's crazy. Like, did you ever watch that movie Her? Like
No, I
Her?
haven't.
Oh man, that's a good one. You should watch that because it's
Yeah.
like
What's the other
similarly
one you said too? What was the other movie you said? I want to watch that
Ex
one too.
Machina. Ex Machina is more creepy. Her is just really interesting. It's just an interesting movie to like because I feel like our technology is already there and like kind of what we're seeing actually was something Rishikesh said where like chatbots can talk with you like in like a human way. It's called Her. So Ex Machina is like that's also a
I
really
wrote
good
it down.
movie. Yeah, you should
I
watch
wrote
both of them.
them down. I
Yeah.
will. But that was a really good episode. I really liked how we talked about, of course, the energy crisis, which we kind of recap for everyone, but then also talking about artificial intelligence. I didn't even know, like, girl, like, I didn't even know the
Aren't
layers
these
of
your roommates?
like, sorta, but still, like, I did not know. So it was really educational for
Yeah.
me to hear it. But it was also very interesting to me that data is like the most fundamental thing about, you know,
Yeah.
developing these technologies. So I would say, you know, for people who might be interested in learning about this research, you know, I think data analysis, data methods is going to be, in my opinion, a very like big topic moving
Yeah.
into the future.
I think like people have started like open source crowdsourcing information. They've done that a lot for like they did it for the Human Genome Project and for a lot of biological sciences it's been like the case. So I worked in neurocomputational science, which is kind of related to what AI is because you're trying to model the brain and we were doing it with fish, with zebrafish in my previous lifetime when I was a scientist. So when we were doing that, I mean, like the main thing ended up being like it's very hard to model a brain because a brain is so much more complex than, just uh, like a simple pathway. It's like so many different connections are made. And even with that, we would have to collect a lot of data. But we would collect data and we would also crowdsource data. Like we would get data from other labs. And so I wonder right now, like there's so much like patent like fighting and like a lot of lost knowledge and or even just withheld knowledge. And if there wasn't privatization of a lot of these industries, maybe there would be more sharing. Everything would be safer, right? Like you just have more data.
We see it with Facebook, Amazon. Every time we put it, and they sell that data. There's that privatization to a certain degree, right?
Yeah.
Based off of this data that is being collected and actively sold, people are able to develop programs or suggestions. How many times have we been on Instagram and we get those notifications, right?
Yeah.
Of like today I was looking at Fabletics leggings. Next thing I know, I open up Facebook. It's like
it's on everything. It's on every platform. Yeah,
exactly. So data is truly like the essence of a lot of
and that's technology too. Like that's what I was trying to get Hrushikesh to kind of tell us a little bit more about, was like, what are the tiers of AI? Because AI is a lot of things that you might not even know is AI to things that you might suspect is AI. And the most obvious thing would be robots and like human consciousness and stuff. But I think what both of the people that we had, Chai and Rishi, that they so simply put is like, these are things we shouldn't be super afraid of because, well, for AI, it's like so far out, and hopefully policy and the people will understand the ethics behind what they're doing. I think that's really important. I hope that we can push for those things. But yeah, like, don't just sit back and be afraid, right? Like, being afraid, the more knowledge you gain, the less afraid of a certain topic you are. So science is a big one. We saw it with Monita Soni's, also Dr. Monita Soni told us about all the fear with the vaccines and how people don't want to take it, and how so much of it has to do with lack of information, or lack of knowledge, like not
education, like and that's literally what she said. If you're scared about something, then learn about it. And then by learning about it, you're going to become even more equipped to make that thing not scary anymore, I
think Chai said that, but yeah.
Yeah, I'm sorry, did I say Rishi? I meant Chai.
Yeah.
Chaitanya said that, and I think that's so, that's so true. We can become the advocate for safer science, if that makes sense. And I think that's definitely the direction, the new beginnings that we talked about this whole month. With that being said, we're wrapped up June. We're heading into July. This has been a great month. I truly enjoyed it. It could have been the nerd in me, but I like this. I love this month. Okay. And I look forward to seeing you coming up next month as well.
Yeah, come back. We probably won't be on live next week, but the week after, tune in to find out what our theme for June will be. And then we also have stuff lined up for, not June, oh my God, July. I don't even know where I'm at. It's the pandemic talking. July, and then August, and we have cool stuff lined up for August. I think it'll be so interesting to hear what people have to say in August, because I love my topic for August. So please come, not next week, but the week after. And thank you, Yashu. And thank you for bringing your friends. They are so incredibly smart and so have so much to offer. And Chai came twice. Can you please tell them thank you? Amazing.
I got you. Thank you so much for giving them not only the opportunity, representing University of Florida as well. So shout out to all the Gators out there for doing their thing. We will catch you guys again. This is Desi Talk. Peace and love.
Bye.